Most dedicated gamers who grew up with arcade games, the NES, and the Game Boy feel a sense of nostalgic happiness when they remember playing them. These classic platforms have had many iconic titles made for themselves that still hold a special place in people's hearts today, with remastered versions of beloved childhood favorites. Today we'll be taking an in-depth look at a game that holds a similar status and popularity, a timeless favorite that's a household name in the world of arcade games. So relax and enjoy the ride. Rise of Bionic Commando. Bionic Commando is a classic video game that was first released in 1987. The game was developed by Capcom and was available on various platforms such as the NES, Amiga, and arcade machines. The game is set in a fictional world where players control a character named Rad Spencer, who is a member of the Republics. The Republics are at war with an evil empire called the Imperialists, as we will see and dive into soon, and players must navigate through various levels to complete their mission and save the world. This series has an intriguing plot that takes place in a world where Nazism persists even after the fall of the Third Reich in World War II. In this setting, an imperial state emerges, seeking to uphold Nazi beliefs. In the 1980s, the Imperialists come into possession of a highly confidential Nazi document called Plan Albatross, which their leader, Generalissimo Weitzman, decides to execute alone. The Republic, a rival superpower, sends a commander named Super Joe to stop Weitzman's plan and retrieve the document, but he is captured by the Imperialists. To rescue Joe, the Republic sends another commander, Rad Spencer, who is a bionic human. Rad easily takes down most Imperialist checkpoints and rescues Joe, who tells him about the Albatross, a massive weapon that the Nazis had not completed during WW2. Spencer sets out to foil the Imperialists' plan, making his way into their secret base, where he learns that to control the Albatross, Hitler himself had to be brought back to life. Weitzman wanted to interrupt Hitler's rival to keep the ship to himself, but his plan fails, and Hitler is awakened and defeats Weitzman. Spencer fights Hitler and kills him, causing the base to be destroyed. He returns to Joe and the rest of his squad. Bionic Commando was a commercial success and received critical acclaim for its innovative gameplay mechanics, story, and graphics. The game's popularity led to various sequels, remakes, and spin-offs, which kept the franchise alive for several years. The game was also responsible for the creation of a loyal fan base that still enjoys playing the game to this day. We will explore the various installments in this franchise as we go. Bionic Commando Arcade. In 1987, Capcom released an arcade game titled Bionic Commando, which was originally called Top Secret in Japan. It was directed by Takeru Fujiwara and is the first game in the action platformer series of the same name. After its initial release, the game was also made available for several PCs. Bionic Commando was included in the Capcom Classics collection for both PlayStation 2 and Xbox. In this, Super Joe embarks on a journey through 5 levels ranging from a forest to a base in order to thwart an impending threat from an armed force. To aid him in his quest, Super Joe has a bionic arm that features a grappling gun, enabling him to swing from the ceiling or pull himself forward. This game was distinctive at the time because the player was unable to jump in a platformer game. Instead, the protagonist must use their bionic arm to traverse gaps or climb ledges. The levels themselves are straightforward, like any conventional platformer game, but there are numerous obstacles to overcome, such as enemies, cliffs, pits, and other hazards. To obtain prizes such as points and power-ups, the player must shoot crates that appear on the screen in parachutes. Unlike the majority of later games in the series, the player cannot use the bionic arm and shoot simultaneously. The arm cannot be used in midair, and the only available power-ups are weapon upgrades. While this game is typically regarded as the prototype of the NES game Bionic Commando, there are very few similarities between the two, apart from their localized titles, as the original titles of each game are different. Bionic Commando Classic. In Japan, Bionic Commando was initially launched under the title Hitler no Fukatsu Top Secret, which translates to Hitler's Resurrection Top Secret. The game is a platformer that was made available for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1988. Rad Spencer travels through multiple stages to save Super Joe and thwart the schemes of Generalissimo Kilt. Rad possesses a bionic arm that includes a grappling gun, which allows him to swing across gaps or pull himself towards objects. It must be noted that Generalissimo criminal killed went by the name Weitzman in Japan. The gameplay and mechanics are the same as the arcade version of the game too. The boss enemy in the original Japanese release of Bionic Commando was Adolf Hitler, not Master D, as seen in the Western version. The original Japanese box art depicted Hitler in the background. However, the image was altered to remove Hitler even in the Japanese art due to censorship concerns. In the Western versions, all references to Nazism were removed. In Bionic Commando Rearmed, Hitler is referred to as the leader. Bionic Commando Rearmed. The iteration is an advanced version of the original Bionic Commando game and belongs to the Bionic Commando franchise. It was produced by Capcom, and Grin oversaw its development for Xbox, PlayStation, and Windows, and was released on August 13, 2008. This is also a prequel to the 2009 Bionic Commando installment as well. The gameplay is somewhat overhauled, with a few advancements in place as compared to the previous iterations. The previous hit point system has been replaced with a health bar, which players can restore by collecting health collectibles from their foes. The player's bionic arm can now shoot to acquire barrels and enemies and use them as shields, and deflect most objects aimed at them. Players can change weapons mid-game, with different weapons being effective against different kinds of enemies. The game's battles with enemies have been reworked vigorously, and the final boss is now a full level. Cooperative play is available, with enemy AI adjusted accordingly. Infiltrating and hacking into the enemy networks involves completing a 3D puzzle for bonus points or health restoration. Challenge rooms require players to use the bionic arm to traverse levels as quickly as possible. Multiplayer modes include Don't Touch the Floor, where the bottom region of the level is fatal and kills the player. Finally, a mechanism for force feedback has been developed for the bionic arm, weapons, and other events. Bionic Commando Elite Forces. Bionic Commando Elite Forces is a Game Boy Color game released in 2000 that follows the story of a new Bionic Commando named Rad Spencer, who must save the world from a new enemy known as Project Albatross. The game features side-scrolling platformer gameplay similar to its predecessors. Rad Spencer is equipped with a bionic arm that he uses to swing, climb, and attack enemies. In this game, the bionic arm can also be used to grab onto certain surfaces and slide down them, as well as lift and throw objects at enemies. The game includes various power-ups that enhance the bionic arm's abilities, such as a longer reach and the ability to fire projectiles. The game is split into various missions, each with its own objectives and challenges. The levels are designed with multiple paths and secret areas, encouraging exploration and experimentation with the bionic arm's abilities. Along with the main missions, there are also optional challenge rooms that test the player's mastery of the bionic arm. Bionic Commando Elite Forces also introduces a new feature to the series, which is the ability to switch between two different playable characters, Rad Spencer and his partner, Super Joe. Each character has unique abilities and weapons, encouraging players to experiment with different play styles. Bionic Commando 2009. Bionic Commando was released in 2009. It is the continuation of the second game and its remake, Bionic Commando Rearmed, which was released in 1988 and 2008. In this edition, the storyline is set a decade after the NES game. It follows the character Nathan Spencer, a government operative who works for the Tactical Arms and Security Committee, TASC, in the fictional city of Ascension. TASC specializes in training bionic commandos, including Spencer. However, Spencer is betrayed by the government and falsely accused of assassinations he did not commit during the Bionic Purge. He is imprisoned, but just before his execution, a weapon experiment goes wrong, resulting in an earthquake and radioactive shockwave that devastates the city and kills its inhabitants, leaving it vulnerable to a terrorist invasion. Spencer's bionic arm, which has been taken away, is returned to him, and he is free to clear his name and the TASC's. Super Joe, a supporting character from the original NES game, also features in the sequel, where he is identified as Joseph Gibson, the Player One character from the arcade game Mercs. Gibson, a former lead director of TASC, helps Spencer clear his name and assists in legalizing bionics again. The gameplay in Bionic Commando has shifted from its predecessors to become a third-person shooter. During gameplay, players are most responsible for handling grenades and special weapons that are dropped from delivery pods, along with the bionic arm and tungsten pistol. Unlike other shooters, the game has no reloading mechanic. Instead, ammo is collected throughout the level levels with different types of ammo indicated by different colors. Pistol ammo is orange, grenade ammo is blue, and special ammo is red. Special ammo can only be found in certain locations around the levels and grants a different amount of ammo depending on the special weapon equipped. Arm abilities are unlocked as the game progresses, and upgrades to weapons and characters are gained through an achievement system. Completing challenges grants uploaded ammo capacity, damage, health, and more. The game features various types of enemies, like biomechs, grunts, and polycrafts, with some being immune to bullet-based weapons and can only be defeated by hitting their weak spots with the bionic arm or by using grenades or heavy weapons. There are also different bosses, such as the Barak helicopter or the Mohole, which require a special strategy to take down. Although progression between levels is rather straightforward, they are open and allow players to approach enemies in various ways and paths. Some areas require players to interact with terminals to progress, and these parts cannot be passed on foot, but rather require players to use the swinging mechanic of the bionic arm. Bionic Commando Rearmed 2. Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 is an action platformer game developed by Fat Shark, and it was released by Capcom. It was released in 2011 for PlayStation, Xbox, Arcade, and Windows. The game plays out as next in line to Bionic Commando Rearmed and occurs right before Bionic Commando in the franchise timeline. The gameplay in Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 is similar to its predecessor, with the player controlling the protagonist Nathan Rad Spencer, a soldier with a bionic arm. The game is played from a 2D side-scrolling perspective, with Rad navigating various levels filled with enemies and obstacles. The bionic arm is the main gameplay mechanic, allowing Rad to swing from ledges, grab objects and enemies, and perform a variety of other actions. The arm can be upgraded with various enhancements, such as a more powerful grip or the ability to charge up for a stronger attack. New to Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 is the ability to jump, which was not possible in the previous game. This new feature adds a new layer of complexity to the gameplay, as the player must now balance swinging with jumping to navigate levels and defeat enemies. Another new feature is the ability to use environmental objects, such as the exploding barrels or crates, to defeat enemies or solve puzzles. These objects can be grabbed with the bionic arm and thrown at enemies, or used to create platforms to reach higher areas. Boss battles in Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 are a highlight of the game, featuring epic battles against massive machines or other enemies. These battles require strategic use of the bionic arm and other abilities, as well as careful dodging and maneuvering. In addition to the main story mode, Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 also features a challenge mode, where players can compete against each other for the fastest competition times on various levels. There is also a co-op mode, allowing two players to play through the story mode together. Fall of Bionic Commando. There was a lot of confusion surrounding the games in the Bionic Commando franchise, particularly in regards to their connections with each other. When Bionic Commando was released in the Western market, it was marketed as a sequel to the 1985 game Commando, which was a hit from Capcom. However, this was not the case in the Japanese market, where Commando went by another name, Wolf of the Battlefield, Senjo no Okami, and there were no links between the games. In Japan, there was an authentic sequel to Wolf of the Battlefield called Mercs or Wolf of the Battlefield 2, which allowed players to control 3 characters at once. To further add to the confusion, Wolf of the Battlefield 2 was not released under the same name in the Western market due to differences in the storyline and characters involved. Eventually, Wolf of the Battlefield Commando 3 was released for the PS3 and Xbox 360, where the roads finally met. However, the characters in this game had nothing to do with the previously popular Super Joe and his team. The failure of the Bionic Commando franchise can be attributed to various factors, one of which is its complicated nature. The series began to lose its essence from the Elite Forces title onwards, as they disregarded the fundamental core of the game. Although the game mechanics remained similar to the original, the storyline was diluted and the game's graphics were inferior compared to its contemporaries. The fact that it was only released for the Gameboy platform further limited its reach, hindering its growth potential. The Rearmed title shows promise in terms of improved camera angles and 3D graphics, but it failed to break even. The 2009 release of Bionic Commando was also expected to perform well with its AAA similarity, but it was let down by poor gameplay, a linear plot, and unappealing frame rates and level designs. With Batman Arkham Asylum released in the same year, the competition proved too much for the game. Bionic Commando Rearmed 2 was the franchise's last attempt at success, which did show improvements in terms of gameplay, with the ability to replay levels and better graphics. Despite this, the franchise had already lost its audience and was not able to recover. Is there going to be Bionic Commando 3? Currently, there is no information available regarding a new installment in the Bionic Commando franchise. Capcom has a tendency to remain quiet about this particular franchise for extended periods of time and then surprise everyone with a sudden new release. However, gamers are eagerly anticipating a potential return and are always excited about the possibility of a big comeback. Marvelous verdict. To summarize, Bionic Commando had a lot of potential to succeed, but lost its way by trying to cater to different markets and losing its identity in the process. Despite this, it's still worth playing the game if you can get your hands on it to see what it could have been. Hopefully, there will be a new title in the near future, and we remain hopeful for its success.